Hello, everyone, and welcome to From Fact to Fiction. Thank you for joining us. On Fact to Fiction, we unpack the truth behind my favorite specialty thrillers. Think Michael Crichton, John le Carre, Tom Clancy. And while these works differ in specialty, from medical to political to national security to techno thrillers, each immerses the reader in a new but realistic world. And the best of these blend fact to fiction so well, you don't know what is, what could be, and what's impossible. It would take an expert to know. That's why each time we meet, I pair up with an expert and we select a new specialty thriller. We'll not only talk about why we love the book, but unpack the truth behind the fiction. Our book today is a 2026 novel, Weapons Free, by David Bruns and J.R. Olson. And our experts today are David and J.R. Thank you guys very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us again.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yes, I should mention J.R. and David met with us last year when we talked about a book in their Command and Control series, Line of Succession. It's awesome, and check out our interview on that. But today we are talking about a first book in their third series, and this series is called The Third Option, right? The
Yes.
book, the premise, from as I see it, is that Chinese Navy has unleashed a game-changing weapon that will tip the balance of power in the Pacific. And amidst this devastating intelligence, there could be an opportunity to execute one of the boldest covert actions in the history of the CIA, hence weapons free. Do you guys have anything to add about the book?
We should say, by way of introduction on Weapons Free, I was a submarine officer, and this novel sprang out of my um, love for The Hunt for Red October by Tom Clancy, which I read first as a midshipman, as a plebe when I was at the Naval Academy. Then I went on to do summer cruises on submarines and finally became a submarine officer one day. But I've always wanted to write a real submarine thriller. And JR finally, on our 13th book, let me write a submarine thriller. And this is our version of Hunt for Red October, updated for the 21st century. So it's the Chinese and the Americans square off in the South China Sea, which is a flashpoint in that part of the world and has been for the last 30 plus years. Um, and so it's very exciting. And we love the submarine cat and mouse games underneath the waves of the South China Sea.
Yeah, to be clear, a number of our novels have had some really great sequences for undersea warfare, submarine operations, and whatnot. Uh, but this book, actually, about half of the story takes place in the submarine cat and mouse game. It really is. Oh, this is a great story. It
Yeah.
was a lot of fun to develop. It was a lot of fun to edit, go through and see all the
Yeah.
details as we were building out the story. And I think, based on the reviews that I've seen, a lot of people are really loving this story.
Yeah.
Including me. It was great. And David, so you mentioned, David, you were a submarine officer and you were
Mhm.
6 years on as a
Yes.
submarine officer. And but JR is also Navy, ex-Navy, 21 years on active duty and years at sea aboard aircraft carriers and large deck amphibious assault ships. So you two are the perfect experts to write these books. And I said this last time, I'm saying it again. I love this quote. These two guys have lived it. Now they're writing it, taut, tense, and totally believable. You'll be dropped into the midst of a world with which few of us are familiar. So
Yeah.
that's it. That's what makes a great specialty thriller for me. And I'm so happy y'all came back to talk to us about your new book. So let's just jump in then to the facts behind the fiction.
Okay.
So we know where we're going and what we're doing. So yes, the submarines, we mentioned this book takes place, a lot of it takes place on not just US, but China submarines.
Mhm.
And I would, and the cat and mouse, as you said, games between them. Can you tell us a little more about that and the technologies they use to kind of hide and find each other and all of,
Sure.
I was love to
Sure.
hear it.
So sort of 3 minutes of submarine 101. So there's two propulsion systems on submarines. A nuclear powered submarine has a nuclear reactor, and you don't have to refuel that for probably 15 plus years, which means that you have continuous power as long as you want it forever, right? So a nuclear powered submarine can go pretty much anywhere in the world. They make their own fresh water, they make their own oxygen, and they have unlimited power. So the only constraint you have on a deployment is food. A diesel electric submarine is a ginormous battery which is charged by a diesel engine. So the constraints you have are fuel because you have to fuel that diesel. Now they have big tanks, so they can be gone for quite some time. But the difference between the two is that when you submerge in a diesel electric submarine, that diesel is running that submarine is running on a battery. Which, if you think about the difference between an internal combustion engine car and an electric car, it's much quieter because you have very few moving parts. Um, Now, the submarine force, their number one weapon is stealth. So, not being seen, not being heard. So, that's accomplished in a couple of ways. One is through sound dampening,
Right.
which is the technology which the U.S. developed, U.S. led really through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Um, and that way, if you use, for example, like in World War II movies, you hear ping, ping, ping. That's active sonar, right? We very rarely use active sonar. Almost all sonar tracking on submarines is done passively, which means you're listening for noise. That can either be broadband noise, like a propeller going through the water, or it can be narrowband noise, which is like a motor maybe shorted to the steel hull of a submarine, so it's emitting a frequency out into the water, and you can track that. So very sophisticated listening systems on submarines. And active sonar is very, very rarely. I think I can probably count on one hand the number of times we actually used active sonar when I was on board for multiple years, and every single one of those was an exercise. It was never in real life.
That's because
Um,
if you send out active
exactly.
sonar, other ones can hear you, right? That's
Exactly.
the
So if
important
you
part.
broadcast noise into the water,
Uh-huh.
you have told people where you are, and that is what you don't want to do as a submarine. So
Can
both of the submarines in this book are what we call fast attack submarines, which are exactly what they sound like. They are submarines that are there sort of on the front line defending things. The other type of submarine is called a fleet ballistic missile submarine or a boomer. They carry nuclear weapons. Their job is to get hidden, stay hidden,
Mhm.
and not get found.
Mhm.
Fast
Mhm.
attacks, so fast attacks would go on deployment. They would go to the northern coast of Russia
Okay.
in international waters and monitor what's going on up there. They would be off the coast of always outside of the territorial waters, which is 12 nautical miles. And you would watch ports and things like that, or you track other submarines. So you're tracking their noise. Again, it's done passively, so you don't know exactly where they are. So if you watch a movie like Hunt for Red October, this is what they're doing. So they stream a long towed array behind the submarine, and you've got hydrophones all along that. So they're picking up all that information, and they're getting you a line of bearing. So if you have a line of bearing on a moving target, and then you change direction, you get a different perspective. So eventually, you can triangulate where that submarine is and what it's doing.
Wow.
Did I miss anything, JR?
can I use my completely darkened gym example of submarines? So
Sure.
imagine, if you will, Linda, two people, each one with a 9 millimeter and flashlight, and they are trapped in a school gym that is completely blacked out. And their mission is to hunt down and kill the other person. So that's essentially a good way to sort of think about what submarine warfare is, right? First one to shine the flashlight gives away their position instantly.
Yeah.
But if they happen to shine their flashlight on the enemy first,
Yeah.
they could probably get off a pretty good shot, right?
Oh, yes. I love
Or if
that.
somebody trips and makes a noise, and then the other
Yeah,
person
there
can
you
sort
go.
of find them, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Heavy
Wow.
breathing because you're afraid.
Huh. How many submarines does the U.S. have? And of those, you said there's boomers and the fast attack. I mean, just I know, like,
Off
I
the
think we're
top of my
working
head, I
with
think there's
50.
about
I
70.
think we're working towards higher than that. The
Yeah.
Columbia class will replace the Ohio class for the boomers, and the Virginia class, I think we're into Block 5 now. There are
Yeah.
still some Los Angeles class. I think we have about 50 fleets Marines right now in the fleet.
wow. And how many of those are they out all the time? Are those like all mostly out?
Submarines have a very high op tempo, especially fast. So there's two different schedules. So a fleet ballistic missile submarine, a boomer, they have a very set schedule, and they actually have two crews. So you have a blue crew and a gold crew, and the blue crew takes over the submarine, does a workup, and goes to sea for 3 months, comes back, turns the submarine over to the other crew. They do a workup, and then they take the submarine out. A fast attack has one crew, and you get tasked all the time for all kinds of different things. So our schedule would be 2 weeks here, back in port for a week to fix whatever we broke underway, because we're always breaking things. And then you're gone for 3 weeks. You can do longer deployments. I was an East Coast sailor. I was based out of Norfolk. So a very common deployment for us would be what we call a northern run, which is up around Norway and into the Barents Sea and watching the Soviets. Well, at that time it was the Soviets. It's the Russian Federation, but it's the same problem. Um, and that would be typically about 3 months.
Wow.
And you're gone. You may do a port call on the way home for a few days, but you're gone for that entire time, and you're underwater for that entire time.
Wow.
And talk about the food stores. This is very interesting.
Yeah. So your only constraint is how much food you can bring. So you bring as much food as you can possibly bring, and you put it everywhere.
Oh my God.
So in the berthing area, you will line the floor with like the big industrial cans of like tomato sauce, the big honking ones. You'll line the floor with those all the way through, and you'll walk on cans until you eat through the cans. Any place, especially forward, any place you can put food, you will put food. And after the first, you have fresh fruits and vegetables for the first week, maybe 2 weeks. You have fresh eggs for maybe the first 2 to 3 weeks. After that, it's powdered, frozen, freeze dried, whatever. And pretty much once you're out about 6 weeks, it all pretty much tastes the same. I mean, the food is very good. The culinary specialists do a fabulous job, but you're in a closed environment with a lot of competing smells, and you just sort of lose all sense of taste, really.
Ketchup is your best friend.
So
hot sauce.
When you talked about this in the cat and mouse game they were playing, just talked about how underwater we use radar, passive and active radar.
Sonar.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Says sonar. I was shocked that the submarines still have to come to the surface to transmit and receive communications. Is that true? They still have to do
So
that?
you have to come to the surface to transmit.
Mhm.
You can receive limited messages submerged by either trailing a wire or trailing a buoy. That's called VLF communication, very low frequency. And the wavelengths there are like, tens of kilometers long. There's, if memory serves me, 5 VLF stations around the world. One in Hawaii, one's in Maine, one's in Washington, maybe one in Guam. I'm not sure. But you can reach a submarine submerged if they're trailing a wire. But it's very low data rate. It's a couple of characters a minute kind of thing.
Oh my gosh.
We used to have something called ELF, which was extremely low. That was decommissioned, I believe. That was like 1 character a minute. So you'd get like a 3-digit thing that says that code that means like come to periscope depth or whatever. But if you want to send something, you'll come to periscope depth, and you'll there's 2 ways to do it. There's a broadcast which is always going on, which is like fleet information or emergency type stuff, which is receive only. But if you want to get message traffic specifically for your submarine, you query the satellite and you get a burst communication. But you can be up, put up a mast, receive traffic, and be down in a minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
If you're in situations where having a mast out of the water is dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah. So in the book, they were concerned about other people, the
Yeah.
Chinese finding them. So they had to be
Yeah.
as fast as possible because they were having other drones and other satellites could
Yeah.
see them come out. And it struck me
Right,
that
and
maybe, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
there were instances, I'm pretty sure it was in this book, where you had somebody monitoring scope exposure,
Mm,
right? Scope is up for 8 seconds, put it down.
yeah.
And in high risk situations, we'll definitely do that. So yeah.
Wow. And so it struck me that given that level, that probably the bottom of the ocean is the only place left on Earth where you could actually hide, where people can hide. Right?
Now,
Now,
So
yeah.
yeah, so the ocean environment's got a lot of variation to it. There's temperature variations because of currents. There's salinity variations. So you can sample. You can go from periscope depth down to X hundred feet, and you can sample. You get a profile of temperature, salinity, and you can look for layers because layers will form in the water. You could either be above or below the layer, and those layers will channel the sound. Or you can do something called a shadow zone, which is like if you sort of hide underneath the layer and then the sound goes around you. And you can find these things, but your best friend is not having any frequency emissions going in the water at all. So that's your sound dampening. And those are things that are done in the shipyard and in port. And one of the things I think at the beginning is the Chinese submarine had a sound short of a pump. And that's how they were tracking him. But it was only visible on one side of the ship. So they figured out, if I'm hearing this, I know he's over here because I have to be on his port side in order for me to hear it. And if memory serves me, it was like a bilge pump or something. So it was so it's not on all the time. So you could get this frequency, this tonal, this narrowband frequency, and they could track it when it was there.
Clever. Clever. In the book, it's not a secret. Again, the Chinese have developed this new weapon and they want to test it. They decide they're going to blow up a big ship. And then they had to tell everybody. Why did they have to do that? And does it really happen today? And how do you keep something secret that you've developed and then tell the world, now we have this great new weapon we have to test?
Yeah, so the U.S. Navy, other navies around the world, we put out what are called notice to mariners or notice to airmen, right? Do both to close areas off where live weapons testing will take place. And that's a safety thing that's done on a routine basis. A great example of where that went wrong was back in the early 80s, I think it was. We were doing a live fire test of a Harpoon missile, or at least a test fire of a Harpoon missile. It's launched typically from a ship, a Navy ship, or a submarine to target a surface ship. And they closed off this test area, and an Indian flagged merchant ship apparently missed the notice to mariners alert and sailed into it during the live fire test. They didn't realize the ship was there. And the harpoon hit the bridge of the ship and killed some of the crewmen.
Oh.
So those notifications are considered pretty darn important. Obviously, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. If you're going to put something like that out, you're announcing to the world that you're doing something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in this case, what we set this up to do was the Chinese in what they consider their own territorial waters have an underwater test range. And so they're testing their torpedo on this underwater test range. In final test, though, it has to be out in deeper water. And so if you're going to put a notice out in that area, that's one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. And you're basically telling everybody you have to avoid those shipping lanes. And the way we set up the story, I think is pretty realistic. I mean, the way you would try to, track that the text.
Huh.
So it was fun thinking through all of the mechanics and the timing and everything else that had to be in place for the covert action, quote unquote, to succeed at the climax of the story.
Mhm. Much of this happens in international waters, as I said, outside the 12-mile, I guess, claimed territory. And I was struck by the amount of posturing and like kind of what's called political theater that happens out there, where ships you mentioned, will bump into, harass each other, pretend like they're going to hit each other, possibly even bump into each other.
Shoulder.
And I guess that actually happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happened. It's been in the news a little bit, but if the people watching, your show here, if they go online on the YouTube and they put in Chinese, Philippines incidents at sea, South China Sea, something like that, some search string like that, they can find all kinds of videos where Chinese ships and Philippine ships have collided. They shoulder each other. The Chinese Coast Guard harassing Philippine ships. I mean, it's pretty intense in and around the South China Sea, around the Spratly Islands specifically. But
Mhm.
it is an intense thing, and you can see videos of it online today. It's amazing what technology has given us in the way of the ability to see what actually happens out there, at sea when those videos get uploaded to the web.
Wow, wow. And I
Yeah.
guess, oh,
Within that part of the world, what's happened is China claims almost the entirety of the South China Sea as their inland waters. They call it the nine dash line, but it basically goes around the outside of the contours of the South China Sea, and they claim it as their territory. So inside of what's called the exclusive economic zone, which is 200 miles out from the borders of the Philippines, there are a number of little atolls. It's called the Spratly Islands. And over the last 25 to 30 years, China has come and claimed these little atolls, and they built them into military bases. Um, and they claim them as Chinese sovereign territory now with a 12 nautical mile boundary around it. And they have, surface ships there, armed Navy combatants. They have missile batteries. They have they have landing strips, and they
hmm.
have armed people there. So this has become a serious uh, situation within the South China Sea, and China shows no sign of slowing down. And this
Nope.
is not new. This has been going on for the better part of 30 years. But
So,
it's come to a head now because the Philippines has realized, well, they've realized that they're kind of screwed. Not that they didn't realize that before, but they're really screwed now. And and the US has not been as focused on that part of the world as we've been wrapped up in other things for the last 30 years, the global war on terror, you know, the list goes on. But that is a major 30% of the world's shipping goes through the South China Sea.
So one of the
so
things
by
that the
So,
claiming
U.S.
these
Navy
islands,
does,
they could disrupt all of that. Is that what they're
yeah,
trying to do?
they could. So the U.S. Navy, under guidance from our political leadership, routinely carries out what's called freedom of navigation operations
yeah,
or FONOPs, and we totally ignore the claims that the Chinese have on these islands that they've created, these bases that they've created in the South China Sea. And we routinely sail within the 12 nautical mile territorial claimed limits. And it's always, we get, berated by the Chinese over it, and we ignore them and just say, these are international waters. We're
yeah,
practicing freedom of passage, the whole deal. So the United States has yet to actually forcefully stand up against the Chinese over those islands. The reality is, if you look even at some of the bigger islands that are out there, Fiery Cross Reef, Scarborough Shoal, some of those bases that the Chinese have built, they are not consequential. A single aircraft carrier strike group could level what's there. But that is a major international incident if that
yeah.
takes place.
Right.
And we have not, sought to create that
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
So there
Such
is
a great book. Yeah.
one place in the South China Sea, where the Philippines has sort of turned the tables on the Chinese. So, and I think it was in '99, they took an old, I think it was a military transport ship, and they grounded it on a reef. It's it's called a Sierra Madre. It's still there today, and they maintain personnel on it. And that is there. So they're claiming that area, just like the Chinese have claimed other areas. Although the Chinese dredged it up and built an island and staffed it, they just grounded something and they kept it there. Well, when you have people on board a rusting hulk out in the middle of the ocean, you have to bring them food and water. You have to resupply them, and that's become a real source of tension in real life and also in our novel.
Yes.
And I guess I'll end there because that would give away too much.
Yes, don't give it away. Don't give it away. I love your books because you really show both sides of, now it's mostly US and China here, but you get into the heads of the individual people and show the conditions they work and live under and the stresses on their personal lives. You bring the personal side of your characters really strongly into your books. And it struck me that there's a real difference, between being in the Chinese military or working for the Chinese government and working for the Americans. And, one was the fact it just seems like there's a lot more more pressure to conform to making sure everything you say and do and look and feel conforms to what it means to be a good, Chinese party citizen.
So from our perspective, if you think of it this way, China has something called a social credit score. You probably have heard that term before, but within all the Chinese major cities, you're under continuous surveillance in some way, shape, or form, whether it's you're walking across the street, they catch you jaywalking, they've got facial recognition. You do something wrong, you say something wrong, you do something online that's against the party's guidance, your social credit score starts to go down. And that impacts your job opportunities, whether you can get a loan, whether you can go to school, get accepted to the best schools. So there is a lot of pressure within Chinese society, 1.4 billion people, to conform. And that sort of translates, we know, into the military environment as well. What's kind of funny, what I've always thought funny as a career naval officer is that within the U.S. military, we have services that are very doctrinally oriented, and that's like the Army and the Air Force. But they're very, very strong in conforming to doctrine in military operations. Whereas the U.S. Navy, it's like those are like the shackles that no Navy commander wants to be trapped within doctrine because it destroys your ability to be creative in the warfighting at sea or even supporting operations ashore or whatever. So we tried to build some of that into the storyline, the differences between Janet Everett her submarine and the Chinese submarine CO dealing with his political commissar and all the pressures that they feel on the Chinese side. And even on the US side, I mean, Janet Everett is under tremendous pressure for what's going on out there in that operation. So,
well, like I said, I really enjoy your books. This book was also really great, and I can't wait for our readers to read it. And you have a second in the series and a third coming out this year, too. You guys are super prolific.
The third one comes out early next year.
Okay.
The second one is called Alpha Strike. It comes out on the 21st of July, so almost a month from now.
Awesome.
5 weeks from now. That's a little bit of a detour for us. The inciting incident is a doctor who's working for a Doctors Without Borders type organization in Africa gets kidnapped and gets taken into the hinterlands of Mali by a jihadi warlord. And our fearless CIA friends are tasked with finding them. So this is a little bit far from the deep blue sea that the Navy guys normally tread in, but we felt like we wanted to mess around in a desert for a little bit.
Well, awesome. Well, good. Well, I can't wait to read it as well. And we will make sure to send everybody a reminder when that's coming out. So
Great.
All right. Well, thanks, you guys. Thank you so much for coming back to see us and talk to us about your books, and they're wonderful. And good luck and congratulations on your new series. And thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
And we'll see everybody soon on From Fact to Fiction. Thank you all for listening.